All right, let's go ahead and get started. People will wander in as they figure out the door situation. So thank you very much for coming today. Lillian Soul is the director and founder, actually, of SEDCUS, which she will talk about, and tell us about how she, as a missionary, has been able to help different groups within the country of Costa Rica create some self-sufficiency, and it's in some very, very creative ways. Unlike the United States, Costa Rica is a Catholic country. However, they are also pretty smart, and they will go to Lillian, who is not in the Catholic faith, and say, we need a program on. And she and her team will put together programs. Another thing that they do is work with, very close to the SEDCUS building, they work with people that are illegals coming in from Nicaragua because of the terrible conditions there. And so she's able to provide health care for some of those folks, including some pretty sad cases. There was a child who needed, what was it, Lillian, 4 pairs of glasses to go from horrible vision to correctable, but they couldn't go in one leap. Her lenses had to be. They thought that she was mentally retarded, and it turns out the kid just couldn't see. So those are the kinds of folks that she works with. My husband and I have been to support her with teams for 11 years. We're going back again in January. And I will be blunt, going to visit Lillian and work on a team with her is always an exciting experience because we never know what's going to happen. But we have a great time, and I thought Chesapeake Forum would really enjoy hearing Lillian's story, how she helps groups, and just enjoy her personality. So, over to you, Lillian.
Well, thank you, Jody. And it makes me not as nervous knowing that Mike and Jody are there. And so I just want to share with you these big words, you know, self-sufficiency. And I'm just a nurse midwife. And in curative medicine, we don't get into a lot of that community development. So over the past 50 years, which I have been in Costa Rica, I have learned to expand my horizon. And one of the things I want to help you understand is, where is Costa Rica? No, we're not an island, not Puerto Rico. This is Costa Rica. And we have Nicaragua on the north border and Panama on the south border. And so many years ago, we were asked to help a community way down in Biolay. And we can see that it's very close to Panama. And you can actually cross into Panama further up in the mountains in an hour and a half. And so we're really close. But this community is what we're going to be talking about. And one of the things I want you to know is trust. That's a big word. How do you get a community to trust you? Well, it was easier for me because I worked as a nurse midwife doing curative medicine, and all of that was fun. You got to sew up hands, deliver babies, and do all kinds of fun things. But community development, what's that? I wasn't real sure, but I had read about a Chinese proverb that said, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach him to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. And I thought, wow, that's incredible. All I've been doing is giving people fish. And I come back 6 months later, I come back over and over. And it's the same diseases, the same parasites, the same problems. No potable water, horrible roads. Well, to get into this community, it was 10 hours from San Jose at that time. That's 30 years ago. And we traveled over Death's Mountain. And once we got near the community, we went off the main Pan American Highway and went up into the mountains. But these roads were just mud. So really cars, horses were really your best way to do it. But at a man's pace, you could walk up to Biolay in 4 hours. Man's pace. If we're talking Lillian's pace, I think it would take us 3 days. But this place was awful. How did we ever get there? That's what people used to say to me. How'd you ever find this place? I didn't find it. The government had asked us to take over the health care of these communities that seemed to be very abandoned. And they were. They were very abandoned. And so as we started to work and started to look at what we could do, I was doing curative medicine for 5 years. Now, that sure gives a community a lot of time to be able to trust you. And trust doesn't come easy. It doesn't come fast. That's the one thing I learned. Trust takes time. I had a little boy that cut off his toes, and I could not get them to heal. It had bone exposure. And finally, the 3rd month, after I tried everything I could think of, I said to the father, I can't say I washed my hands of this because I still felt responsible, but I said to the father, if you don't let me take him into San Jose, said a little 6-year-old, said, if you don't let me take him, I really can't help you anymore. And I'm afraid he's going to lose his foot. So I said, the next day I'll be by the big tree and ready to go back into San Jose. And I waited and waited, and in about 5 minutes, I could see a horse coming down the road, and his little boy was sitting on his dad's in front of him in the saddle. That father handed his little boy over to me and said, take him. I can't help him get any better. And so I had the trust of this man. He didn't really know me, but he knew I was trying to help his son. And so as we did this, and I took him into San Jose, I was in touch with an orthopedic surgeon. I thought we're going to go for surgery or something. He said, use nitroglycerin and burn it. And I said, what? He said, yes, just with that. And with that, we sealed off the toes, and we were able to take him back down into the community 3 weeks later. So trust, yes, curative medicine, that's a really short-term response. So how do I get into community development? Well, at about 5 years after working with these communities, I realized that we had to form health committees. That wasn't too hard. I liked teaching. I wrote a health manual, which was a way of helping our health leaders or promoters so that they would have everything on pages written for like a 3rd grade level. And the whole idea of working with a women's group had come up. But we'll get into that a little later. What I want to talk to you first about is when we went back and back to these communities, and I continued to see the same problems, I knew that water, potable water, was our #1 problem. Do you think that was the community's problem? No. And I was all excited. I'd been teaching for a whole year. And I said to my class as we were doing the last day, I said, okay, folks, after we've studied so much and learned that potable water is a must, I'm sitting in the class and I said, okay, what is our priority? And one of my little health promoters in the back, Don Jose, raised his hand and he says, we need a coffee truck. And I thought, a coffee truck? What's that have to do with water? Did all this teaching I did? No, nothing stuck. And, you envision a coffee truck and some people say, oh, like a Starbucks. No, we're not talking about a Starbucks truck. We're talking about a truck that looked very much like a Hummer that was very high and was a pickup truck. And so I'm like, coffee truck. And the reason was they would take their coffee down the mountain, 2 bags at a time. That's 200 pounds, a 100-pound bag on each side of the horse, walk him all the way down the mountain 4 hours, then unload him, and then walk him back up the mountain and get 2 more bags, and walk them down the mountain. They could get 4 bags down that day. So it was so important to have some kind of a vehicle that would take the coffee out. And so I thought, well, we didn't get our water project. I wasn't very successful with that, but okay, we'll go with a coffee truck. What does that entail? That entails writing a grant. Well, nurse midwife, curative medicine sure didn't give me any instruments like on how do you write a grant for a coffee truck. So I came back into San Jose, did a little bit of homework, and I realized that this was the beginning of teaching them to fish. I wasn't doing it all for them, but it was that whole concept of not just giving them a fish. Here, I'll take your coffee down. I couldn't. But we got a grant from the Canadian Embassy, and it looked just like a Hummer, huge, off the ground about 3 feet. So the mud could be over the wheels and it could still go. And it could carry 50 of these 100-pound bags. That was wonderful. We were so excited. We could almost get the whole load down in one day. So I came to understand that community development is a holistic approach that empowers communities to identify their problems, their needs, their strengths, and resources. And this is all to improve their health, social, economic, spiritual, and environmental conditions. That's a lot, but that's what teaching a community to fish for a lifetime is. We needed to work on that, and we had already gotten past the trust thing. So we were equipping our communities with different skills and knowledge that they needed. Coffee truck was number one. So we go to another meeting, and I'm all excited because now I know we got the coffee truck, and now we'll get the water project going. And as we were talking, and everybody's like, what is our most important problem? And again, little Jose raises his hand, we need better roads. And I wasn't too excited this time because I thought, this is getting a little bit out of my comfort zone. These roads were mud. I mean, pure mud. They were like soap. And so we had a 4-wheel drive vehicle. We had to actually put chains on. Now, one time we went and they actually forgot a set of chains. So, excuse me. You can imagine going up the hill, the first car, taking off the chains, running down in the mud, put the chains on the other car, help him to come up. It did take us a long time to get there. But the mud was such a problem. And so we started. We had a group of men that were very aware of what was going on, and they wanted to help. And they were the ones that were looking for government help. And so as the roads got better, they got the lastre, which is like a rock base or gravel type with bigger rocks in it. And this made the roads much better. And so after about 3 years, when I asked the question about water, they were ready. They were ready. The government was agreeing to help us because it's their job. It's a government's responsibility to give these communities potable water. Excuse me. So we started on our water project. I was so happy. I knew that once we had that, the parasites and all the worms and all these different tropical diseases we had would clear up the majority. But one of the problems we had was still the rotavirus. That's vomiting and diarrhea. Vomiting diarrhea is a virus that attacks third world countries in a terrible way because almost 50% of our kids under 5 die from this. And you think, well, how do you treat it? Must be an antibiotic and they can't get it. No. What do you think the solution? to vomiting and diarrhea is? Oh, I see you're all sharp, hands are all up. Yes, you have the answer. It's dehydration. They're dying from dehydration? Yes. Well, what antibiotic do you use for dehydration and a virus? What antibiotic do you use for a virus? Yes, I see all those hands. You're wrong. You're wrong. It doesn't even take an antibiotic. So what does it take?
Water.
Salt and water. What? We have that in every kitchen in Costa Rica. So why do the kids die? Because a child will die in 24 hours. 24 hours from dehydration. An adult takes about 3 days, so we don't worry about them. But the kids, you need to get them rehydrated. And what's the best way to do this? Yes, you're also smart. The best way is making the solution at home in your own kitchen. So we teach you have a liter of water, that's about a quart. You have 5 tablespoons, that's the big one, of sugar, and a teaspoon, that's the little one, of salt. That's not hard to make. Anybody can make that. So that's what I had done. I had printed up a sheet. I couldn't spend time with each mother because we had to see about 100 patients a day. And so I would hand out, I'd say, here's the instructions. This is what you need to do. Her child that had come to the clinic was not very dehydrated. He wasn't comatose. We don't do IVs or anything like that unless they're really sick. But she looked at me and said, oh, okay. And I said, you can make this solution at home. You just take the sheet, there's pictures on it, and you give them a teaspoon at a time. Wow. Well, see, the thinking is, for most of these moms, if your child has vomiting and diarrhea, what's the best thing to do? Just don't give him any more liquids and it clears up. Of course, he's near death. So we teach things like the hole at the top of the head will sink in, the tears dry up, the mouth is very dry. So those are signs of severe dehydration. And so we would say to these people, okay, treat him at home, a teaspoon at a time. It doesn't matter if he vomits again. How do we take nitroglycerin? Nitroglycerin never hits your stomach. It's sublingual, under your tongue. And it stays there, but it's absorbed through the mouth. So a teaspoon of this liquid will absorb through your mouth, the baby's mouth, and he will become more rehydrated. So I was all excited. I handed her the sheet of the health manual I had written, and I was confident we could move on to the next patient. About 2:00 in the morning, there was this on the door, and I'm like, I'm not very sociable at 2 in the morning, but I got up to look, and it was this mother with the baby dead in her arms. And as I took the baby from her, I said to her, oh, what's going on? I said, what happened? She said, I've been doing exactly what you said. And she started to cry, and I was a little upset with her. I have to confess, I wasn't real gentle. He said, well, why didn't you do what I told you to do? And she's crying, and she said, I did everything you told me to do. And it occurred to me to say, why don't you tell me how you made it? And so she said, I did exactly what you said. I did a liter of water, 5 tablespoons of salt, and a teaspoon of sugar. Huge mistake. I was able to start an IV on the little girl. She lived. But I asked myself for many times, whose fault would it have been if that baby died? I felt it was mine because I didn't take time to show her. And I do a thing with my mission teams when they come, and I always say, let's mix a rehydration solution. And I'll say, okay, here's the three elements: sugar, water, and salt. And I'll say, now, which do we mix first? And everybody will go, doesn't matter. I had one scientist, well, the physiological decompulsion. I said, no, you're getting a little technical. Well, how do you think we have to mix this? Just put them all in together, shake it up, and start giving it teaspoon by teaspoon. That was part of the problem. She didn't read the part that said, put the salt in first, shake it up, and taste it. But how salty is salty? Well, I always tell women, when we cry, we can taste our tears and they're salty. And men who don't cry, of course, I say, just lick your arm when you're sweating. That's the saltiness this rehydration solution should have. And when people do that, if it's too salty, you start over. Excuse me. But if it's not salty enough, you can also maybe start over. But had this mother done that, had she tasted that first salt in the solution and then add the sugar, if you put the sugar in first, you can never tell how salty it is. So it is important. And just that simple thing, I almost caused that baby to die. And so that was a turning point for me, because this is one of the places where I thought, had I not been here, would she have continued giving that solution? Because a salty solution will cause you to continue to vomit severely. And the baby would have died of severe dehydration faster than the 24 hours. And so we got together as a couple professionals and we said, this isn't working. We're giving them a fish for a day, but the people can still die. The babies can still die. And that's when we formed SETCUS, which is an organization that wanted to look for more sustainable solutions. We wanted a coffee truck. We wanted better roads. We wanted a water system. And now in healthcare, we wanted people to know and understand the reason why they had certain conditions. And rotavirus was one of them. I had one mom come in. She had lost 5 children to the rotavirus. And she was with her 6th child. Severe dehydration, rotavirus, vomiting and diarrhea. And I said to her, after she said to me, I've lost 5 of my kids. And I said to her, what? Do you know now what to do? And she said, yes. And I said, great. She said, it's a tiny little pill that I have to get from the health center, which is 4 hours away, and I don't have anywhere to get there. And I thought, 5, number 6 is ready to die, and she still does not know how to make a rehydration solution in her kitchen. The Ministry of Health even called me on the carpet because I hadn't put in my health manual that they had this little pill. And I said, no, because people will think that's what they need instead of the sugar, salt, and water out of their kitchen. And so I plugged away at sugar, salt, and water. Sometimes we look at people, I look at a mom, 5 kids, number 6 on the way to die, and I think, Who had ever taken the time to teach her? Well, that's what Setkas was doing now. And so we wanted to be able to have people trust us, but we also wanted them to understand that this is not a fast process. I think the one that had to understand that was me, because I sure couldn't hurry up certain things. Getting them to recognize potable water as the most important problem in the community. No, it was coffee truck, good roads, and then healthcare. But it's a slow process. And so after 1 or 2 years of working down there, the water project started. We found a spring up the mountain. We found the government actually helped us. They sent people from the water company that brought German scientists, and they tested the spring that we had found, the community found. I didn't. I had gone up to see it by horse, but they had over 100 liters, that's almost like 100 quarts a second coming out of the spring. And the German guy said, you could, this whole valley, you could give good potable water to. So we were helping, we were walking, we were doing all we could to get the water project going. But there were still a lot of other things. And it was 18 years later, we finally had their water project on their terms when it was a priority. But if anything happens to that water project, they're the first ones up the mountain to fix it and get it going. So I can't take any of that credit. But what I can take is I was disappointed I had not gotten across that water was more important. But they were working on their felt needs, real needs. And so after we had all of this, I want to just show you a little bit of a video that will give you an idea of what coffee is, because we're going to get into our coffee group and you're going to see how important coffee is to these different communities. I think this is where Trina comes in.
They have to have their coats, their hats, and all the baskets ready. They have to make sure it's only red ripe cherries when they start picking. And when they finish, they have to go and measure the coffee. Once the coffee is measured, it's dumped in the truck and taken to the mill. It's really important that the coffee leaves the farms immediately after they finish measuring. So the coffee will arrive still very fresh. Once the coffee is measured, it's driven through the funnel to the depulping machine or to the demucilage machine. And then the classification, when you're doing the wet process, the lighter beans float, so you take those away. And you leave the denser beans that stay at the bottom. That's the first quality. The drying of the coffee has to be perfect. That is the secret where the coffee sustains better. Has to be slow, at a low temperature. You dry, you pause. You dry, you pause. It's in the sun or it's in the drying machine. You have to pause and let it rest. The drying process is essential. Once the coffee is dried, the coffee has to be stored properly in a warehouse.
So we can see how interesting coffee is. Well, we had worked with the community now for a good 10 years, And the idea was to continue working with some women's groups. But our women's groups were not doing so well because we're dealing with, I don't know if you know the term machismo, the man is more important. Women are just for babies and cooking and taking care of the house. Women can't do anything. They're not even smart enough. Now, I have a lot of women that would be very upset if I left you with that idea. But we worked with some of the men and we worked with these women and we said, you can do this. And so the most important thing I think Setkus did was to get the group legalized. And what does that mean? Well, in Costa Rica, it's like setting up a nonprofit in the States. You have to have, we have a general assembly, we have a board of directors and the projects you want to make. And so to get this legalized, the only way we could get help from the government or any other group would be to have this legal part done. And so Setkus was the one that helped to legalize. A lot of the men weren't very happy. This was only a women's group. Well, what do women know about business? What do they know about coffee? But women are pretty smart. And one of the things that we were accused of is that we would just be a gossip group. We would just be there to gossip and gossip. We founded the group with 12 founders. I never became a founder because I wanted them to realize they could do this on their own. If I would be part of it, they always look at me then. And so I was named an honorary member, but I am not a part of the group in the sense that I can vote like each one of these women. We made it an all-women's group, and that was another problem. Many of the men felt that they should be included, especially in the decision-making process. This is where we didn't want them because the women were very capable. And so we're up against this gossiping type group, all of these problems, but we were able to form in Costa Rica the first ecological all-women's group. Ecological. Well, that just means we recycled our water, and Costa Rica was coming into this conservation and environmental process that they were trying to make Costa Rica more environment conscious, and coffee processing is terrible for the environment. So ours was an ecological, which meant they recycled the water, they did other things. They recycled the skin of the coffee bean and used it for fertilizer. And so they had all these really neat things, but they had a lot of help from government groups because they were an organized group. So, people say, well, how did you come to decide on coffee? Well, that's really interesting because I was not really interested in coffee or anything. I was interested in having the women take part in the importance of their health. Now, why would I be interested in that? Well, we were having a lot of respiratory problems, and people would say to me, well, why do you think this is? And I said, because each one of the women roasts coffee in her home, each one individually. And so I thought, this can't be. There has to be a way only one woman gets sacrificed and all the others are saved. So we had to find a way that the women could roast coffee in one place and not in every one of the homes. They only had wood burning stoves. And so it was hard. It was hard. How do you cook? How do you roast coffee if it's not on a wood burning stove? So as the ladies tossed back and forth what we would do, Oh, some even came up with a great idea of sewing. Oh, we could have a sewing club. Well, I think every women's group in Costa Rica was doing sewing. But we didn't have any of the primary material. Where would we get material? So I was kind of like, ladies, what do we have right here? Oh, well, we have coffee. Well, let's do something with coffee. Now, you need to understand, I'm not brilliant in coffee. I didn't even know much about coffee except that I love to drink it, a café con leche with milk. And I thought, what do we need to do? And so the ladies all agreed, you know what? We need a roaster and we could roast all the coffee in one place. And they all look at me and they say, Lillian, where can we get a roaster? And so, you smile and you act like you know, but I had no idea. And so I said, well, let me go back to San Jose and I'll try to find out about roasting or a roaster or a toaster or whatever you call it. Turns out my brother-in-law worked with Peters, the big German company that exported coffee from Costa Rica. And so I said, Roy, I need help. I need something to roast coffee for our group down south. And he goes, oh, I have a friend who's selling a small one. That would be perfect. What do you think he's selling it for? I think he's asking for $200. So when I told the ladies, they all looked at me like, $200? Where are we going to get that? And a lot of people criticize me because they say, well, why didn't you just give it to them? Well, I don't know if any of you have experienced, but sometimes when you have to work for something, it has an added value. And so they had to work for their coffee roaster, toaster. They paid it with coffee. And they worked hard to do that, but it was something they were so proud of because they bought the coffee roaster. And so this was a big celebration. And let me show you just a clip before we get to we didn't get the second clip. This is the Asamobi.
Que no café. Era un producto que lo teníamos en la zona, que los productores estaban desmotivados porque el precio era muy bajo. Y que tal vez nosotras podíamos lograr que ellos se motivaran.
That was the end of it.
Yes. So we see that the women are excited about it because maybe it's a way of helping to motivate some of their men into this coffee production. So we finally got the big roaster, and I'm going to give you a picture of it so you can imagine when I'm talking about this big ball. It didn't come with instructions. Nobody said how to do it. Nobody said that when you're cooking the coffee and you take it out of the big ball, it continues to cook, roast, and burn. Well, we didn't get any of those instructions. So let me show you this clip. In our first attempts, big fire, to get our ball rolling.
Empezamos con la tostadora, porque aquí en las comunidades la gente tomaba café durante el año. Entonces sabíamos que ese era el primer negocito que nosotras teníamos que empezar, tostándole café a los vecinos para generar un poco de recursos.
No teníamos ni idea cómo se tostaba café. El día que íbamos a estrenar la tostadora, echamos el café a la máquina y lo quemamos.
Los primeros 2 años no hubo nada.
Okay, so you can see what happens So when I said the coffee keeps roasting, is because once you take it out and you try to cool it down, but we didn't know that that would continue to burn. And so we lost about 3 loads of coffee, but we learned some great lessons and found the critical point for roasting our coffee. We did our neighbor's coffee, but the big problem was they said, we don't have any money. Can we pay you with coffee? So, we had allowed them to pay for the roaster with coffee, so it sounded like a good deal. Well, the problem is if you don't dry your coffee properly, if it gets a mold in it because it was too damp before you put it away or you started to save it. And so all of these different coffees, some were horrible, some were okay. But how do you control if everybody brings any coffee they can find? So we found that we had to think further. We couldn't just roast the coffee. We had to have a way of getting good coffee. We could dry it. And we got a lot of help from the different government groups. And I want to emphasize this. One of the things when you're working with community development is networking. And this networking helps you to use local resources, regional, and go all the way to the top. Now, you have to understand, some of these ladies had never been out of the community. All they did was watch their children and have babies and clean the house and roast coffee. But they had to learn how to be able to go into some of these offices and command that attention of, we know what we're doing, because they did. They were doing very well, but they needed help. And so this is where I think it's so important that you look for these networking groups so that there are all kinds of help that comes in. They not only had government help, they had private help, but there were a lot of changes that had to be made. Let's see this other clip.
Nada de recursos. Nosotros lo que hacíamos era dar y trabajar, dar y trabajar. Lo que no sabíamos era que un vecino traía un café que lo había recogido de una forma y lo secaba de otra forma. Un café era bueno, un café sabía horrible y entonces empezaron las quejas. Decidimos agregar el beneficio cuando la misma gente que nos traía el café llegaban y nos decían que nos iban a pagar con kilos de café y no con dinero porque no lo tenían. Con el beneficio, nosotros podemos procesar todo el café de Asomovi. Así nos asegurábamos 2 cosas. Uno, la calidad del café que íbamos a empezar a comercializar, y la otra, el apoyo de los productores de café de la zona.
Now, I know many of you have not had the privilege of picking coffee. I used to sit in my, when I was giving these health education classes, and these guys, were in the back and they were like, and I was like, boy, I must be boring because they can't even stay awake. And I found out that they were up at 4 a.m. to go pick coffee before our 8 o'clock class. And so one day I thought, let me go see what it's like. And so I said, I'd like to go pick coffee. I've never done it. And it should be interesting, enlightening. And, it looks so beautiful. I used to admire those coffee fields, and I'd see the people picking. And you have to be so careful. You can only pick the very ripe red ones and leave the green ones behind, because they drop the quality of your coffee. So here you have to learn how to do this, and you have to do it so fast. And so I would be standing there on the hill, and I would pull the branch down so I could reach it. I'm not real tall, I'm just 5'1". But as I was getting the coffee, I could hardly it was so easy to just go like this and get all of them. I could fill my bag up really fast. But no, Lily, you had just the red ones. Oh, okay. And you're bending the branch the wrong way. Oh, it has a right way? Yes. Oh, what's biting me? Oh, I was standing in an ant pile. And this was part of my day. By the time I knew, the ants were halfway up my legs. So all of these kind of things, there's snakes, there's all kinds of bugs, there's all kinds of, I thought, you know what? I don't think I was cut out for coffee picking. My hat goes off to these people now. And as I look at those beautiful fields and I see some sucker has to go through there 3 and 4 times before the whole season is picked. And so I have a new respect for coffee pickers, which I had to learn the hard way. But these people worked so hard. These ladies knocked on every single door they could find. And they were able to get some government grants, some government funding, and they were able to buy the heavy equipment. You saw that swirly thing that went up on the video? That's what takes the coffee from the water up into a chute that will actually peel off the skin, and then you have the 2 pods and they fall apart. They're sticky, they're sweet. It actually tastes pretty good. Well, they had all of this equipment, and I don't know how many of you are electricians, but these equipment, this is big stuff. It needed 3-phase electricity. Now, out in the rural areas of Costa Rica, you will never find 3-phase. We can find 2-phase, that'll run a dryer, but most people didn't even have a dryer. And so they didn't need it, they had 1-phase. So we had to go to 3-phase, and it was about 5 kilometers from the last place where the electric company came in. Now you can imagine how expensive that was, and to expect these ladies to pay for it was not possible. They knocked on the electricity government door, and they were able to get the light company to install a 3-phase cable, 5 kilometers. That's like maybe 3.5 miles up the mountain to where they had the coffee processing project. Now that was a huge win for us, because electricity is expensive, but putting it in from the beginning was even more expensive. And actually today they were able to win on a contest thing. They got everything so that they can run not the 3-phase, but everything from the lodge, every other building, the office, everything on solar energy. So they made out pretty good. They're good negotiators. And so we have the coffee season. It's actually only, do you know how many times coffee trees produce coffee? 1 time a year. So that means there's like 3 months. They have work, they have money, they have food. But what do we do for the rest of the time? And so we realized that coffee was not sustainable. It would not be enough for the group. And I had been very anxious to take some of our mission teams down there, but we had no place to stay. And so when we had gotten a grant way back years before, we got it for a small restaurant. And so they made this huge like dining area and the little restaurant. And I'd take a team down and I'd say, okay, no baby doll pajamas. We're all sleeping together in this big community building. And so we all slept together. We didn't have a problem, but we needed to have a place to take these teams, sleep them, and give them food. And so as we thought about coffee's not going to do it, we need to find something else that would generate income the whole year. And you guessed it, Costa Rica is the best place for tourism. Tourism is moving into one of our first places out doing bananas and pineapple. But tourism, we have a lot to show. And these communities live right along the national park called the Friendship, La Amistad. And so here we had all of these natural resources, but no place for people to stay. And so our next big project was, we need to work on a lodge. Wonderful. That we already had the little restaurant, and so we started accommodating things and moving things around and getting everything ready. And we could take our mission teams down there to work, because the idea was not only to show them coffee and sell them our coffee, but it was actually to get a little work out of them. And so they were always willing to come and sweat it out. We made some of the coffee beds for the solar dryers, and we did other things. So let me show you this clip.
70% de las entradas en Asomovie era de turismo.
Al inicio Asomovie era solo el beneficio, solo se hacía el proceso del café. Pero entonces resulta que venía gente de afuera, veía el proceso del café, pero no tenía dónde quedarse o no tenía dónde comer. Entonces nace la idea del albergue.
La posada es muy importante por varias situaciones. Una, porque genera empleo, desde los guías, las cocineras, las personas que limpiaban, lavaban. Además, muchos de los grupos que nos visitan compran el café que ya está tostado, y eso era durante todo el año, cosa que no es con el beneficio. Entonces, en ese momento para nosotros era la posada la que estaba generándonos más entradas de dinero, ¿verdad?
So our team started to come, and they were able to do a lot of the work on it, but they also did some really exceptional things. One of the gals that came was she redid Starbucks, and they were getting rid of 2 of their coffee grinders, which were kind of big. And she thought, I wonder if they would give them to me. They had no purpose. They were getting new ones. And so they were able to bring us these 2 used coffee grinders from Starbucks. They were new for us, and they could do even a faster, better job at grinding the coffee we were producing. And so we were able to do a lot of the production, get a lot of this done, and the lodge, the coffee processing, everything seemed to be going so well. We had even applied for, the government has what they call a special rural project, which is handicap accessible. So you can go to Biolay in a wheelchair, and we can take care of you. That is what Costa Rica is bragging about, is that we're almost handicap accessible in every place, even out in the boonies. And so we're looking at this, and the day we got our permission, we were elated. We had built this lodge. We had spent a lot of time. Families had been sacrificed because the women were giving so much. But in 2012, lightning, which is very common, thunderstorms, hit our breaker box. Nobody knew it. And nobody realized the breaker box was in the middle of the linen closet. I think most of you know that, as for safety, that was not a very smart choice. And so in 2012, our lodge burnt to the ground. I was devastated. Our hearts were broken. We had worked so hard for this. Why would God allow this to happen to these women that had sacrificed so much? The fire engines got there 40 minutes later. The wooden building lodge had burnt in 10 minutes. That's how fast it burnt. And the ladies looked at me and I thought, now what do we do? You know, I've learned over the years, you don't ask God why. You learn to say, what am I to learn from this? And I thought, there's nothing to learn from this, Lord. We learned everything just trying to build this lodge. But we hadn't learned everything. Let me show you this clip.
He estado cayendo mucha rayería en esta zona. Cuando llueve, cae mucha rayería. Y unos días antes estuvo unos visitantes y estaba mi madre y mi persona recibiéndolos y un rayo tocó muy fuerte, digamos, cerca de la posada y tocó alguna de las cajas. Nos dice que tuvo su tiempo para encenderse. La primera persona que se dio cuenta del incendio fue mi madre, porque uno de los perros que ella tenía de mi hermana estaba ladrando mucho, entonces se levantó a callarlo para que le dejara dormir y ella, donde se asoma por la cocina, ve fuego. Entonces ella sale corriendo y pasa gritando a mí, Ariana, Ariana. Cuando yo escucho se está quemando Asomóvil, yo quedé como en shock. Mi esposo fue el que reaccionó, salió detrás de ella y en la carrera nada más me dijo, llame al 911. Eso eran 5 segundos, 10 segundos, ya no había posado. Lo que nosotros mirábamos de nuestra casa parecía que era todo Asomóvil lo que se estaba quemando. Cuando llegamos aquí y ver la posada, fue... Disculpen, pero... Fue difícil porque era algo que estábamos terminando. Y ver que en 5 segundos no había nada fue impactante. Muchas compañeras tuvieron que buscar trabajos de cocineras, algunas en el colegio. Otras están montando emprendimientos propios, poder subsistir. Pero hay otras que están en casas sin empleo. Tenemos que buscar otras alternativas. No podemos sobrevivir solo de café.
Well, I went down after I heard the news. My heart was broken, but I did realize God had something bigger and better for us. And many times we had some of our volunteers, they'd say, you know, Lillian, you should have put the balcony on the back because that's where the sun goes down. And it's beautiful. Of course, we just had a little tiny window. And so now we could build the ideal lodge. God was giving us that opportunity. We weren't that happy right then, but as we started to look for funds and groups started to come in, we were able, excuse me, in 2 years to build the most beautiful lodge. incredible. God had shown us that he had something better for us. And I want to just show you again how it is volunteers help us.
Lillian, you might want to narrate some
Okay,
homeless.
I wasn't sure if you could hear me or not, but this group came in from First Baptist of Stockton, and they came in, and the ladies from the group also helped, and so we had all kinds of help, and we were building the strong foundation because we had to first get rid of the old one before we could start laying the new one. And this team worked like dogs. But each one of the ladies, if she wasn't working in the kitchen, she was working with us out in the field. And so you can see they cooked our food. We ate right there, the same place that we were working. In Costa Rica, we have earthquakes. And so we need to use rebar like you wouldn't believe. In 1958, it was said that every building in Costa Rica had to have rebar. And so we did a lot of rebar and wiring it. This is the group of ladies that were helping us. This is the group we were helping them. Some of the kids that were always there to help, and the pastor from the group that was also the leader. This time we were able to build it the way we wanted, to see a beautiful lodge come as a product of a very sad situation. And there's our group. They actually did some typical dances for us, but we left with our hearts filled, and they came back several years and were able to finish it off with a balcony on the whole back end of the building, which is beautiful. Now you'll have to come down and visit us. We have teams, and we have different projects that we can show you. And so, summing it all up, what I want you to understand is teaching them to fish is not just giving them a fish, it's teaching them. And these are the key principles. First, education and training. We did that with our health promoters. We also were fostering a sense of ownership and responsibility. That's the lodge. This is inside. Nothing like we had before. God was good. We had bunk beds, we had rooms, we have one that's handicap accessible, and we thank God for our new home. This is a blessing for these 39 women that are now affiliated. So we have, just going over our principles again, we have education and training, which we did. Capacity building, we got people to realize they had the capacity to manage projects. And so we had seed money, which helped us do that. Sustainability, we're focusing on the long-term solution. It wasn't just giving them health or a pill, but doing it for long-term. Networking. Remember, I had said how important networking with the different organizations, government at different levels, fighting for their rights. These people, although they were poor, had the right to the universal health care we have in Costa Rica. And so after fighting 3 years, we were able to get them to visit these communities and always have a positive approach, because we tend to solely think about the deficits, but the positive approach is what gives these people a reason for living, reason for continuing. So long term, this is their project. It's on their terms. And I think that's the secret to sustainability. Thank you. This map just shows you some of our other areas we're working on. We go down to Asawobi one way and come back the coast road. And then we have 3 other projects. We have one out onto the Atlantic coast. We have one real near San Jose. And then, of course, we live real near, we sit on the largest shanty town of Costa Rica. It's called Guadari. And so that's where we have most of our projects. It's a long haul down to Asomobi, so many of our mission trips don't get to go down there, but they do help us in other projects.
So I just wanted to, Lillian, make sure you tell them you started with 12 women. They're now 39. Who else has joined and what exciting things have they done?
Well, I think the most exciting has been just keeping working and doing different jobs. The nice thing about these having the lodge and having the coffee processing, we actually have and can pay women. They don't do it for free anymore. And so it's been an income generating for all of the community. And it's not real easy to get into the women's group. It's not just a matter of, oh, I want to join and get all the benefits. No, we kind of have a little, you have to pay an amount to get in, like a membership. And then you have to agree to give so many hours a month. Why? Because these founders put in a lot of energy and work. But you can join the group if you also agree to put in a little sweat. So it's not just money, but it's a lot of sweat and a lot of giving to understand what it is they're producing.
Some of the women's daughters have joined, and they've also gone to college now.
Yes, I can say that Laura, she has 7 kids. She was the one that was talking most of the time. Her daughter was talking at the end about the fire. She's got a master's in administration. Her other kids have all gotten either tour guide or business administration or sustainable tourism. And a lot of the other kids from the women are able to go on to college. We have different, just like you have the forum, we have different forms of online, or we have the national universities, which are virtually free to any of our Costa Ricans. So we don't have to face those big college debts you do. But our education is free for the Costa Ricans. So we even have a partnership with, it's called Bread for the Hungry in Germany. And they take 2 students from each of the projects and give them a year in Germany to learn German, but also to go on and study more in Germany if they want to. So this has been a really cool partnership.
Lily, can you talk a little bit about the marketing of their product over the years and how it has changed the way, to whom, and how they've sold it?
Yes, our in the beginning we were doing a lot of probably more like the bulk coffee selling, and that would be like to Walmart or some of these stores that you have to guarantee an amount. We didn't do it with Walmart because they paid so little, and they wanted a guarantee on how many containers we would produce. And Costa Rica over the years has moved from the quantity versus quality. And so what we're doing is we are organic. We have 10 women that have gotten grants so that they can grow their own coffee. And each one of these women will have a different flavor or a different type of coffee, so that when you buy it now, and when we go down to Asomobi, it won't just be Asomobi's, but Laura will be one of the ladies that sells her own brand. And Giselle would be another. And so this was a way of getting the women who weren't involved in the growing of the coffee involved in growing and the processing. And we also discovered that when you sell in bulk, they make only 10% profit. So it's not really sustainable. When they roast it, pack it, and sell it, they make almost 40% profit. And so it's a big difference. And so that's what we've opted to do, is to do more of the working in the roasting part and packaging and selling in Costa Rica. We still don't sell international because I've taken several samples, and it's too expensive. UPS, FedEx, or any of these, it's more than what the coffee's worth for the transportation. So maybe someday we'll get there. But right now, it's just in Costa Rica. Or if you come on a mission trip, then you can take order 50 pounds back, like Mike does.
Hi, Lillian. My name is Mary. I'm here in the class. Maybe 6-8 years ago, I was in Costa Rica, and they were talking about the entire country was really moving towards more sustainable and organic processes in their entire agricultural world. And they were talking a lot about companion and beneficial planting techniques. Have the coffee roasters coffee growers come up with any companion planting and beneficial, companion planting that allows them to maybe operate or harvest other plants year round?
I'm not real sure about all of that, but in Costa Rica, there's certain laws that regulate coffee. The first one is you can only grow and sell Arabic coffee. Now, why these decisions were made, I don't know, but that is a law for the country. And the other decision that was made years ago was you had to plant two, what do you call them? Siblings? What do you call the little plants? Two little plants. You had to plant them together. So we have the highest yield per acre of coffee because of this technique. Now, having different types of coffee, it will still be the Arabic coffee. But when they partner and do these different things, it's still with Arabic coffee. One of the things I discovered, we let our coffee soak for 8 hours in water. Once the skin has come off and that sticky syrup is on the seed, you soak it in the water for 8 hours. Then we take it, put it up on the solar beds, dry it, put it into a solar dryer for 18 hours. And that whole process is one flavor. And we discovered that you can leave it in the water for 12 hours and it has a completely different flavor. Now, that was an incredible news to me. But there's a lot of things going on. Yes, we're moving more towards organic. Our coffee is organic, but it's not certified. Why? Because it costs $2,000 to get it certified. So we've never done the whole process because of that. We felt it was more useful to invest in the coffee and not so much for the label. But our coffee is organic. And yes, we're moving more towards organic in a lot of things, vegetables and plants. And most of these ladies all have their little vegetable garden. So they are reproducing some of these things that they need for their homes.
Gee, Lillian, I thought when you said you sent people off to Germany that they were going to come back and grow hops so they could make beer.
No, we're still doing coffee.
The website just mentioned.
I'll be sending it out too.
I believe you'll have a handout which has our web pages on it. Asomobi has a web page. And also, we have teams that are going at different times. We can set up teams. If you have 10 to 15 people that want to go down to the coffee plantation, spend 3 or 4 days there, then we can go on to some of the other projects that SETCAS has been working on over the years. And so these are different options, but I believe there is a handout that you'll get for this.
Yes, I have it ready for them, and I will also send it out digitally when I send out the recording. And that way, there'll be live links, you can just click right from there.
Are all the trips ones where we have to work?
You see, that could be a condition. You could say, we don't want to work, we want to learn. Most people come thinking that they have so much to give. And for me, the greatest privilege is when I hear people say, they gave me more than what I feel I gave them. And so when you come and enjoy all this beauty and stay in their beds, and we have sheets and blankets and pillows and towels, you know, you're not out in the boonies. It's a really nice lodge. And they have tablecloths and flowers on the tables. And let them serve you. They've worked so hard for this. And they would love to have teams come just to let them serve. They even have a night walk, 2 hours, where you see all these night critters. And not only at night. And so, yeah, we can make any kind of a team. You name it. And of course, Jody and Mike will lead it.
Thank you so much, Lillian.
Yeah, and I do want to point out the video, the home video that you saw was Lillian did. And when she would be down there with various teams. The movie, however, was put together, and you can watch the whole thing if you want through their website, correct?
Yes, or you can buy it on Amazon. It's called A Small Section of the World. Lilly Coffee Company from Italy actually did it. And the only criticism we made of the movie was they did not give credit to anybody that helped the group. And so it makes it look like they did it all by themselves. And I think I've tried to emphasize that nothing was done alone. They had a lot of networking. And that's the secret, I think, to sustainability, is not because you did it by yourself, but because all of the networking you were able to do added more people to help you. And so, yes, the movie's excellent. Lily at the end says, Illy says that we have a scholarship fund, but unfortunately we don't get any of the funds for that. So our ladies worked hard, and I think Illy took a lot of credit that they didn't give the ladies. So, but our coffee did get into their canisters. You know, they have cans, and what Mike pays for coffee at Paso Mobi was like $7 a pound, and they only charge, I think it's 22. So that's for the can.
Any other questions?
So is this where you guys have been?
Yes, Mike and I have been there 11. We have not been to the coffee plantation. That's further south, and we go in January, which is more of a rainy. It's
a dry season.
Dry season, so we don't go there. We work in the shanty town of Wateree.
Usually when we do the coffee tour, we put a little more days in, because you have a full day, not only air travel, but then a travel day all the way down there. So usually we do the teams a little longer. Instead of 7 days, 9 days.
So if Chesapeake Forum wants to arrange a 9-day trip, we'll be happy to help with the.
Exactly. We have the best team leaders you can imagine.
Can you describe my shanty?
Lillian, can you describe the shanty? I have pictures that I can show this lady on my phone, but.
Yes, the shanty town is what we would call a lot of migrant Nicaraguans that have come in. We have a lot of Costa Ricans that have had to move from the rural areas into the city. And these are little pieces of land that usually just tin. Sometimes they get electricity, which is a death trap, because all the wires just hang from the ceiling. So Jody and Mike's teams have come in to redo a house, do the roof, help change the electrical, make it safer, and sometimes change the walls and paint. So in the shanty town, these houses are really shacks. And
Sure.
most people live there, but they don't qualify for any government help.
So they're there to do what kind of work?
The people, the people are moving there to escape the horrible corruption and gangs in Nicaragua. When
And
they,
also for money. There's no
very-
jobs in Nicaragua.
on the far right, that's it,
Yes.
that's a picture.
And when coffee's coming into season, we have like 9,000 Panamanians that come across the border to pick the coffee. So yes, we have a lot of migrants.
Right.
What do you guys do when you go down there?
So
Mostly
this
medical
coming
help?
January, we're going to work on 2 different homes that are in the shantytown. One is on the edge, and then I think another one is deeper in. We will, I think on this one, we'll be doing electrical. I think you said there's
We'll
some.
be doing plumbing, electrical, ceilings, painting roofs, and painting the house.
So the last time we were there, we had a very small team and we worked on a house. Because we were a slightly more mature team, let's just say, we couldn't carry the concrete up, so the woman still has a dirt floor. And her bathroom is still bucket flush, but she has running water coming in. She has electrical. We did almost lose one of our guys doing the electrical. The wire hit the tin roof. It was a little bit quirky.
He just has a new haircut.
Yeah. But we painted. The work had been done before we got there, but we painted and we did electrical. When we walked in the house, like I said, some work had already been done. The electrical outlet hit you in the nose. I'm only 5'5", so you can tell how low this electrical outlet was. But it all got put up in conduit around the tin. It's the shack, it's a tin house.
Well, I hope to see some of you in Costa Rica someday with Jody and Mike. This has been fun.
Very interesting, thank you.
A little stressful, but I've enjoyed it and I appreciated so much sharing our story.
Thank you so much, Lillian. We really, really do appreciate hearing about it.
All right, we'll talk to you later, Lily.